Welcome to all our participants to this second day of the workshop on demand-side data and energy efficiency indicators for Southeast Asia, organized by the International Energy Agency, together with the Regional Cooperation Center based in Singapore of the IEA, Natalie Kauf represented here. My name is Roberta Quadrelli. I work in the Energy Data Center of the IEA, and the team will be contributing from different departments in the agency, including the data center and the energy efficiency and inclusive transitions office of the IEA. We do have also a special collaboration with our colleagues at the Asia Pacific Energy Commission, Economic Commission, APEC. I'll introduce that later, Edito and the team. This is the second day of a 3-day workshop. Yesterday we looked at industry, and today we look at buildings. Tomorrow we will look at transport, and so we focus really on demand side, because demand side data are important. The demand side is driving really the future of the energy consumption and the energy system. So it's really important to have a granular understanding of all the sectors. Data are always the basis for every policy decision. Data for buildings have their own challenges because we have a lot of scattered players in the sector, so the collection may be challenging. We'll hear experiences from the Philippines as well today. So it will be very interesting to hear about the sector. Clearly, our focus on Southeast Asia is justified by the importance of the region. It's a region that is growing rapidly in the energy landscape, very high growth in energy demand. The energy objectives are very ambitious, and while we have differences in terms of energy supply, activities, buildings, systems, demographics, and economic patterns, it's really clear that there is a common sense of ambitions in energy objectives, and also a need for collecting data, ideally according to harmonized standards. And that's also why the international organizations represented today can offer some support. So I would really move to the presentation of the Regional Cooperation Center with Natalie, and then we'll give the floor also to APEC. Thank you, and welcome to a wonderful, we hope, discussion in the next 2 hours. Natalie?
Thank you very much, Roberta. And as you've emphasized there, Southeast Asia is a very important region to us. And I do recognize several of the names on the line today of our important partners in the region. I am based in the IEA's new Regional Cooperation Center, where we focus on Southeast Asia. We're here in Singapore, and very grateful to have the opportunity to be working in the region. We're going to be working more closely with countries in the region, and this is really we would like to ask you to reach out to us if there's topics that you'd like to work with us on more. For example, we have a number of training activities, but we're also working across a lot of different energy sectors. And so if you want to learn more about the kind of training that we do, or you have other opportunities you want to engage with us, please let me know. And I'll put the link in the chat to how you can contact us in this new office based in Singapore. Thank you.
Thank you, Natalie. And I'll give the floor to Edito Barcelona from APEC, representing also a regional organization, very important in the Southeast.
Thank you very much, Roberta. Good afternoon, everyone. I apologize for not introducing ourselves yesterday. I am so used to attending APEC workshop that almost everybody in the room already knows me. So, and I realized that there are many participants from other countries in the region. So to start, I'm Edito Barcelona. I'm I head the team that collects the energy statistics in the APAC region. We've been doing this. I've been doing this for 20 years, and in the last 10 years, we have been doing energy and efficiency indicators, and this area of work. I asked my colleague here, Miss Elvira Gilendon, to focus on. So she's really the one in charge of APAC energy indicators template. Ms. Gilindon used to work at the National Statistics Office of the Philippines. It is now the Philippine Statistical Authority, and she moved to the Department of Energy of the Philippines and was recruited here in APAC, and she has been here doing energy statistics work for the last 10 years. And the next is Dr. Dunlao, who is one of the panelists here. He joined us in April 1 this year, so quite new. And he was a lecturer at the Ateneo de Manila University in the Philippines after he finished his master's degree in electrical engineering. And he moved to Kyoto University to pursue his doctorate, and he became a postgraduate researcher before he was recruited here in APAC. And another colleague of mine who is in the participants room is Mr. Nobuhiro Sawamura. He is not in the panel, but he is one of important member of our team. He is in charge of the Jody oil and gas data at the moment. So thank you very much, Roberta. That's all I'd like to say today.
Thank you very much, Edito. And of course, we have a very long consolidated collaboration with our colleagues at APEC. We are always very happy to work together in data collection and data capacity development with the IEA. So thank you very much for your great spirit of collaboration on data. So I think we're a bit late already, but I'll be happy to give the floor to Agnieszka to continue chairing the session today, which seems to be very, very interesting already with all this contribution from the teams and from countries. Thank you very much and enjoy the workshop.
Thank you very much, Roberta, for giving me the floor. And now I would like to invite René Stevens from the Energy Efficiency and Inclusive Transition Office to give the presentation on the importance of demand-side data and indicators for policy with focus in the building sectors. The floor is yours, René.
Thank you for the introduction, Agnieszka, and hello, everybody. Welcome back, anyone who was joining us yesterday, and hello to new participants. Some of my presentation will be similar to yesterday, but I'm sure you'll also be picking up some sector-specific information today as well. So let me get started with sharing my screen. And hopefully you can see the presentation okay. I'm not sure. Can you see that okay? Maybe not. Not yet.
Renee, can you put it in presentation mode?
Let's see if
we see full screen.
Good. Good. Let's put it in. Let's click slideshow and see what happens. Are we in business?
Perfect.
Thank you so much. All right. So let's dive in. So today we'll be talking about the importance of demand-side data and energy efficiency indicators for the buildings sector. And we're going to learn about what these terms mean, in particular for the building sector. And so the building sector, we know there's a mix of energy types that are used in buildings in Southeast Asia today. And here's a picture it's a diagram that represents the building sector electricity demand, you can see that it's quite it's substantial in the buildings sector for Southeast Asia. So in Southeast Asia, electricity demand is especially important in the building sector. Of all the sectors, it's the building sector that has the largest increase in electricity demand in Southeast Asia. There's strong growth in the number of buildings and rising appliance ownership that's driving electricity demand, and space cooling is particularly important in the region. So this is just to give a flavour of, just as we introduce to the topic of the building sector in Southeast Asia, to orient ourselves on some of the hot topics. And one of the important issues that we see happening in Southeast Asia is around the increased penetration rate of air conditioners in households. Appliances and space cooling actually account for more than 30% of the energy consumed in buildings, and their share is set to increase rapidly. And this trend is actually projected to be increasing and growing ninefold in the region, from 30 million units in 2020 to 275 million units in 2040. And we do see differing rates here of air conditioning ownership in Southeast Asia. Really being able to collect information on and to clearly understand and quantify energy demand and energy efficiency is critical for us when we're supporting building sector policy. So I wanted to include these introductory pieces of information just to set the scene as to why we might be looking at and interested in, of course, energy demand information for Southeast Asia and how it might inspire our policy making and inform it. So into a definition, what is demand side data? I'll go through this briefly because some have seen this before, but today we're focusing on what demand side data represents for the residential and services subsectors, I would say, or the sectors in the economy in Southeast Asia. So demand side data represents the energy consumption and the activity data for the end use sectors, and we often see it grouped into end use sectors according to buildings, industry and transport, and typically energy consumption is given on this per annum basis, and some common units that we'll find in the building sector will be kilowatt hours. We might be talking in terms of joules, potentially when we're talking about gas usage, for example. And activity data is going to vary by category, and it covers a wide range of activities. So for the building sector, when we're talking about activity data, we might be looking at what is the population that is being served, or what is the floor area that we see happening in terms of the energy consumption. So really, this is where we begin with the definition of demand side data. And so what are energy efficiency indicators? So the energy efficiency indicator is a ratio representing the energy consumption per unit of activity on the given activity. So these are signs that describe observable changes, and they really are the building blocks, the evidence that we use for looking at policy and what we might be doing around energy efficiency and how to improve energy efficiency. The most generic or general form of an energy efficiency indicator you might hear about and we use is energy intensity. And once we've got an energy efficiency indicator that's in place and we've identified that and we're collecting data on that consistent basis, then we can be using that data to track and compare information and progress over time. And so In the right-hand side there, this is just a visual diagram that I suppose shows that you can have different levels or different hierarchies of looking at energy efficiency and what those indicators might be. So on the bottom, that's a more fine-tuned, oftentimes in a way more accurate picture of specific energy efficiency performance that might be happening at for the building sector, for example, an appliance level. So what is the energy efficiency of individual types of appliances? And then the next level up would be grouping that into different sort of end uses like cooking or heating or lighting. And then higher up in the hierarchy, we can be looking at the energy efficiency of, households, buildings, or other building types, for example, as subsectors of the building sector as a whole. And so there's some examples there on the right-hand side of how we might define residential, for example, energy consumption. We might look at that on a per floor area basis and using units like kilowatt hours or million square kilometers. Million square meters, not kilometers. That would be pretty aggregated, wouldn't it? And then, so how is all this relevant for supporting or our policymaking, or if we're a person who's enabling policymaking, how is this data gathering useful? So demand side data is really about, and energy efficiency indicators are really about quantifying energy consumption and energy efficiency also. So for the policy development side, this data can be used to identify the current situation, trends, and to highlight problems that need solving or the opportunities for improvement. And they can be used for establishing a baseline of performance and to set targets and objectives. So it's a really important starting place. And again, this applies at different levels of policy making. The very highest level, whether we might be talking about national plans and roadmaps, right down to the detail of what we're going to do about improving the energy efficiency of an appliance in a residential sector, for example, or a commercial. And then monitoring data is, of course, incredibly useful and important for monitoring. Demand-side data on its own is very useful for understanding the current situation, trends, and for projecting what might be happening with energy consumption in our countries or regions. And of course, it's a basis for evaluating progress and success of policies that have been implemented. And then also for refining what we might do in the future and recalibrating targets and really assessing how to make further headway. Just a slight note of caution that when making comparisons using different energy efficiency indicators, sometimes you need a little caution when you're comparing, for example, the energy intensity performance across different places, different regions. There might be different climate or weather conditions, different energy sources, different factors that come into play. So a slight degree of judgment is also needed when we're making comparisons. At the very highest level, we can track energy efficiency of the global economy and how it's changing over time. The IEA has an online energy efficiency progress tracker that enables the tracking of energy efficiency at the global, regional, and country levels. And the building sector has a really important role to play in achieving the global goal of doubling that average annual rate of efficiency improvements by 2030. And that's, I think, especially important given that the building sector has a lot of potential for further electrification. So diving into a couple of examples before I hand back to our chair, just to give a little colour and life to how we might be using data. So here we see an example looking at what has happened with residential energy consumption in Indonesia according to fuel types. And you can see if we look at the far left-hand side of that diagram, we see that, initially back in 2010, biofuels and waste was a really substantial portion of the residential energy consumption happening in Indonesia. And we can see this tapering that's occurred over time. So here we see a picture that it tells a story. So Indonesia has made strides in disseminating clean cooking technologies, and that's largely been driven by LPG. In Indonesia, the government's LPG subsidy program has really helped increase the population that are primarily cooking with LPG. And in 2022, in Indonesia, 85% of the population had gained access to clean cooking. And so here we see, this is an example of looking at energy consumption, how's it changing over time, and we can see, okay, well, how are policies taking effect in a country? And I think this is an illustration of that change over time. And then one final example, this one from outside of the region, but it has some interesting learnings to take away. So this example here is about the demand side consumption from refrigerators in the residential sector. So used imported refrigerators can create unnecessary levels of electricity demand when those imported products could be substandard. So addressing this problem, Ghana implemented a ban on the import of used refrigerators and air conditioners in 2013. And the ban was combined with minimum energy performance standards and labels for new models. And that's resulted in 3 consecutive years of a drop of 2/3 in refrigerators' average electricity consumption, which now stands at only 1/4 of the levels before the ban. And so that's delivered significant electricity savings. Actually, it's equivalent to 89% of current annual electricity generated in the country. So we can see how we can look at the energy consumption data, we can combine that with information around energy efficiency and track that information over time to really look at the impact of policies that they can be having. So I hope that that's given a flavour of what is to come and why to be really excited and engage on this topic. And with that, I will hand it back to the chair. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rene. It was a really great presentation. We are always happy to see the examples, how demand-side data can help policymakers. So I particularly like these examples from the countries. Thank you for sharing the policy perspective in this workshop. And now, as we are a bit delayed, I would like to give the floor to Sonia Garcia Lorenzana, who is from Energy Data Center, from my division, who is expert in the energy efficiency indicators domain. Sonia, floor is yours. Could you please share the presentation? I think, Rene, we can still see your presentation.
Sorry, you can still see mine. Let me stop sharing. Thank you very much for letting me know.
Perfect, thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Good afternoon to you all, and thank you so much for joining us today to discuss the demand data and methodologies in buildings. As Agnieszka said, thanks Agnieszka for introducing me. I'm Sonia Garcia, working in the team responsible for energy end uses and demand data and efficiency indicators built with the relevant activity data. These are the main points that we will be covering today. We'll explore the importance of collecting high-quality data for buildings and why this data is important. We'll discuss how to classify different end uses and fuel types, what insights can be gained from this data, and how it can be used to develop energy efficiency indicators. Then we'll examine various data collection methods and review current IA tools for capacity development. We'll wrap up with some concluding thoughts. Please feel free to ask any question either today or later on via email. And before getting into the topic, I would like to mention that we will try to make an interactive presentation. So I will be combining slides with Menti as you did yesterday. So you should be able to use Mentimeter through the web or using the application on your phone if you have already downloaded. And we will provide you later on with a code. Let's start with why is the building sector important. Buildings and appliances determine and shape our quality of life. The building sector is central to people's daily lives, from the heating, hot water, and cooking in our homes, to the lighting at home and work, and the everyday use of appliances like refrigerators, washing machines, televisions, laptops, etc. As demand for cooling and appliances rises, ensuring energy efficient, low emissions buildings is key to improving quality of life, reducing energy poverty, and achieving also climate goals. When we disaggregate Southeast Asia energy consumption by sector, we can clearly see how energy use has evolved from the 70s to our days. The industry sector remains the largest consumer, accounting for around half of total end-use energy demand. It consumes nearly 10 exajoules per year, with growth driven by increased production of iron, steel, chemicals, and light manufacturing. Then the transport sector has driven the region's oil demand, reaching around 6 exajoules in 2023. But the building sector, while more modest in total energy consumption, still plays a critical and growing role. Today, more than 95% of households in the region have access to electricity, and around three-quarters use clean cooking options such as LPG and improved coke stoves. Energy use in the building sectors has been shaped by rising incomes, urbanization, and significant improvements in energy access across Southeast Asia. And it reflects the transition from traditional biomass to modern fuels, an essential step for sustainable development. However, important gaps remain. Access to modern energy services is still limited, and the surge in commodity prices during the global energy crisis has posed a serious challenge to expanding clean and affordable energy access for some countries. As we can see here in the slide, in 2023, the building sectors consumes more than 4 exajoules of energy each year, driven largely by electricity, oil, and the continued traditional use of biomass, particularly for cooking in rural and lower income areas. So to get us started, I would like you to please go to Menti and introduce the code that you can see on the slide. As far as I know, I think it's the same code as yesterday, so you shouldn't have any problems, but I will give you some minutes to enter the code and to ask you the first questions. So yes, if you enter this code on the slide, I will introduce. Let's start with the first question. What is the name of the institution or organization you are affiliated with? Okay. Department of Energy, Energy Consultant, APEC, ISA Clean Energy Coalition, Philippines, Malaysia. Cambodia. Okay, it was just to kick off and see that if everyone could use Menti as well. Okay, perfect. Let's move on to the second question. What do you think is included in the building sectors? Then here you have a multiple choice and you have to just select one option. And if someone has missed the code, is at the top of the presentation. This is the number that you need to enter in case you need still to enter the code. Okay, so uh, most of you have said the correct answer, which is residential and services. In the agency, we usually take into account four sectors: industry, residential, services, and transport when it comes to collect data and to process the data. But then when we analyze data and we show results, we like to concentrate also sometimes residential and services as a as the building sectors, because we to analyze is important for these two sectors, the analysis of the buildings part and the not buildings part, and also both are very related when it comes to collect energy consumptions by end users. But we will come back again with this type of information. Let's come back again to the slides. So why end-use data are important? Demand-side data are the pillars of modeling and policy activities. The availability of detailed demand data enables bottom-up modeling work, allowing for some accurate projections of future energy needs and a robust assessment of energy transitions. And end-use data are the basis to develop also efficiency indicators. Generally, energy efficiency indicators are intensities presented as a ratio between the energy consumption measured in energy units and activity data measured in physical units. For example, we can compute some indicators such as space heating per floor area, lighting energy consumption per dwelling, or total services energy consumption per value added that give us important information. These indicators provide valuable insights into energy efficiency, consumption patterns, and sector-specific trends, and its selections depend on the specific type of information we aim to extract, whether it relates to household energy use, service sector efficiency, energy intensity, etc. Thanks to all this new detailed data, one can, for instance, decompose the consumption trend into three drivers, namely activity, structure, and efficiency. For instance, here for Portugal, we can see that efficiency gains have compensated for increased structure overall, leading to a more or less stable consumption in energy. This is key to track the impact of past policies, for instance. One can also learn from efficiency indicators where and how savings are happening, the effectiveness of policies, potential for future improvement, and the importance of continued investment. Here are the results from this decomposition analysis shown for the whole Portuguese economy over the past 2 decades. And total final energy consumption in Portugal in 2022 was just above 600 petajoules, with savings equal to 125 petajoules, which is almost the 20% of its 2022 energy consumption. It highlights how much energy has been saved only thanks to efficiency improvements. And here, these gains for Portugal mainly comes from residential and also later on industry and services. This clearly shows how targeted improvements in household appliances, building design, and heating systems can deliver long-term benefits. But going a step back from end-use data, what can we learn from the energy balances? As you know, a country's overall energy situation data can be presented as an energy balances, which is basically a matrix that displays flows and products and is divided into three sections: supply, transformation, and final consumption. In the columns, we have the energy products, and in the rows, we have the different flows. And in an energy balance, you can compare products since they are all reported in the same unit. So this format allows the easy comparison of the contribution each fuel makes to the economy, and also the interrelationships through the conversion of one fuel into another. Here, we will only focus on the demand side data, which is the second and the third floor of the matrix. The third floor represents the total final consumption, where particularly buildings consumption is allocated into the two rows highlighted in blue, which are residential and commercial and public services. Here, for instance, we can see the total final consumption by sector, and it's divided on the left graph we have the total consumption in the world, and on the right we have the Southeast Asia countries. We can clearly see that in the world, the contribution of the building sectors accounts for 28, whereas in the Southeast Asian countries, this consumption accounts only for 21% of the total final consumption, and which is coming with 15% of residential consumption and 6% of services. This reduction in buildings goes to industry, which represents a total 37% in the region. And in terms of residential energy consumption by fuel, the residential sector relies on electricity for 42% and biofuels and waste for 36% of its energy needs in Southeast Asia. In terms of the energy services energy consumption by fuel, but for services, we see that here the share mostly relies on electricity, and while the world has a 54% on electricity, the Southeast Asia region relies 80% on electricity and 60% on oil. Finally, I would like to mention that we can disaggregate more this total final consumption for among countries, and so we can see that it depends according to the IEA World Energy Balance. Residential consumption accounts from 4% to 58% of the total final consumption, and the services sector accounts from 3 to 12%. So, for example, Myanmar and Pakistan relies a huge percentage of its total final consumption on residential, whereas Singapore and Malaysia rely between 7 and 4%. But how to classify end uses and products? Now that we have seen that the third part of the matrix has the total final consumption per sector, this total final consumption, it can be divided between the different sectors, but then it can also be divided again by end uses or subsectors. Buildings is composed by residential and services, which are the two first blocks highlighted in blue. Residential sector is divided by end uses, which can be space heating, space cooling, water heating, cooking, and lighting, and also appliances, which it can be divided again between all the orange blocks that you can see on the slide, and refrigerators, dishwashers, televisions, PCs, and other appliances. And also, we have a category that collects the other energy use, which typically refers to energy that cannot be attributed to specific appliances or end uses due to insufficient disaggregation. Now, the services sector is divided by building energy use, composed by end uses as the residential sector, but here we only take into account space heating, space cooling, lighting, and other energy use. and the non-building energy use, which takes into account the energy consumption in the services sector that is not buildings related, such as, for instance, street lighting. But also, services sector, it can be divided by subsectors, ranging from sewage and waste collection, wholesales and retail, accommodation and food services, to public administration, education, arts, or other services activities. These codes are divided by the IC codes. In addition, energy use can be collected as total energy consumption, of which data centers, which is a segment that has grown rapidly in the last few years. Then each of these end uses and subsectors can be further broken down by energy products such as oil, gas, coal, biofuels, heat, electricity for both residential and services. And the real challenge in here, however, lies in obtaining disaggregated data, which is not always available or consistently reported. And after doing all this aggregation, what can we learn from this end use data? With building end use data, we can answer to the questions such as which end uses consume the most energy, heating, cooking, cooling, appliances, which aspect of our life will be affected in a case of energy price spike, what is the share of LPG electricity used for cooking, are we using energy for space heating more efficiently over time? Or which end uses are efficient and which ones need help to improve? When we look at overall results in IA countries, we see that space heating accounted for over half of the IA energy consumption in the residential sector, with the highest shares in European countries and the lowest in Asia and Oceania. Appliances accounted for nearly 20% of total residential energy consumption, with refrigerators freezer combinations making up around 28% of that share, followed by clothes dryers and televisions, each contributing approximately an 18%. Energy efficiency improvements for space heating have occurred across the IE countries, mostly in the form of better insulation of new buildings and reinforcement of old ones. The effects are tracked by trends of residential space heating intensity, which significantly decrease in many IE countries. For instance, Austria, Belgium, France, Germany, Spain showed reductions higher than 3% of since 2000. As one would expect, warming countries show generally lower space heating intensities, as less energy is needed on average to keep the temperature inside residential buildings at a comfort level. We can then analyze country-specific energy consumption to better understand the key end uses in each case. For example, here in the US, we can see that it's also relying mostly on like half of it in space heating, but then also follow with a huge percentage on appliances and water heating and space cooling. And this approach also allows us to compare between countries and gives crucial insights of our standard of living. One can see the influence of the climate or different lifestyles, such as habits of eating out, cooking methods, and types of stoves. For instance, here we can clearly see a difference between Finland and Morocco consumption. While the majority of energy consumption in Finland goes to space heating due to its cold climate, only a small proportion is used for heating in Morocco, where most energy is instead consumed for cooking. Finally, when we talk about cooking consumption within the residential sector, it is important to differentiate between clean cooking and not clean cooking, which is a topic covered under the climate and sustainable goals. More in particular, the SDG 7, which mentions to ensure universal access to affordable, reliable, and modern energy services. And how do we define clean cooking facilities? We have several technologies for cooking, and we at the IA define as not clean cooking technologies when we use biomass, coal, and kerosene. For biomass, Only traditional use of biomass is not clean, and if you use an improved stove, it relates to clean cooking. With this, we can calculate access to clean cooking, and all of this justifies the importance of data for the residential sector. In the case of services, end uses and are similarly to residential end uses. Detailed data allow to understand which end uses drives energy consumption and emissions, and we can see the difference in the buildings consumption and the non-buildings consumption. And also, we can see which subsector drives the energy consumption. For instance, here in Switzerland in 2022, about half of the energy consumption is covered by only 3 subsectors: wholesale and retail, accommodation and food, and administrative services. Now we'll go again to ask you some questions on Menti with the same code. If you have opened the Menti, I guess you will see here on your screen. So, what is the primary energy end use in your country for the residential sector? You can choose one or more than one if you have more disaggregated data, or all of them if you have them all. For now, space cooling takes the lead, which makes sense because the demand on space cooling is growing more and more. But I'm surprised that, for instance, space heating, it's only two. There's only 2 that have voted for space cooling. Okay, yes, but yes, it makes sense that space cooling is the end use that mostly more of the people have. Then we go to the next one. Would you describe your country's economy as more industry-oriented or service-oriented? Okay, most of you have chosen services oriented and few both and industry oriented. Let's go with under which category of the services sector should electricity used for street lighting be accounted? You can choose just one, either lighting, other building energy use, non-building energy use, or it shouldn't be accounted. Okay, so as you have voted, yes, the correct answer is non-building energy use. And why? Because even though the street lighting is not related to buildings, that's why in services we divide building energy use and non-building energy use, and we take into account the street lighting in the non-building energy use. But yeah, and yes, we really take into account this because it's also important for measuring the energy consumption on the streets. Okay, let's come back to the presentation. And all this for what? Developing energy efficiency indicators is key with the data that I've just mentioned before. The basis of the IES methodology can be summed up with this pyramid graph. The top of the pyramid shows very aggregated indicators, such as the energy intensity of the whole economy, and it's an interesting proxy to compare the trend of various countries, for instance, but doesn't give many insights for policy decisions. The further down one goes, the more data one needs. For example, end-use energy intensity indicators could be space heating energy consumption per floor area, and unit energy consumption indicators can be, for instance, energy consumption per appliances unit, or for instance, per unit of refrigerators, TVs, PCs, etc. So recall that there are two types of data needed. First, energy data by end use and by fuel that we just mentioned. And note that heating and cooling need to be temperature corrected to take into account the weather effects. And we can see this later on. But also, the activity data is important. Here in the residential sector, important activity data could be population, number of occupied dwellings, residential floor area, appliances stock. And importantly, for all this, we need to harmonize the methodology. Following the same set of rules in energy and activity is essential to build robust and comparable datasets. For instance, vacant dwellings and occupied dwellings should not be included in the energy consumption statistics for the residential sectors. This ensures comparability across countries and consistency with population and housing data. With the accurate activity data, we compute the indicators. Each indicator has its benefits and drawbacks, and it's important to select the indicator that best suits the information we aim to extract with the available data that we have. Efficiency indicators then can help us understand the trends and key drivers of energy consumption. Let's start with an example. Looking at the residential energy consumption of IE countries, in almost 2 decades, the energy consumption remained stable with small ups and downs within the blue light trend that we can see at the top of the graph. First, we need some context, and we need to know that the population has increased. So normally, more people means more energy use. Um, but surprisingly, energy use per person or per capita actually decreased by about 10%, meaning people are using less energy individually than before. At the same time, household occupancy went down, fewer people per home. So that usually leads to more total homes, which could increase energy use. But again, when we look at energy use per dwelling, we see a decrease of about 15%, which is even more than per capita drop and means that homes are becoming more efficiency again. Finally, considering only space heating consumption, we see that the energy per floor area benefited from even higher efficiency gains over the period, around 25%. So this is a strong sign that efficiency has improved. And by isolating these effects and these factors, we see that the efficiency gains are the key driver behind the stable energy trend. This is the approach for the composition analysis. If we go to Menti, now I would like to ask you what should be included in the coverage of energy consumption of the residential sector? You can choose between occupied dwellings, occupied plus unoccupied, occupied plus vacation homes, and the three of them. And yeah, the correct answer is occupied dwellings, because as I mentioned before, we don't take into account occupied dwellings and vacation homes to avoid double counting and to make sure that we can compare across countries with the current population data. For each end use, what is the most relevant activity data to compute energy intensity? So for each end use, you can decide either population, number of dwellings, or floor area. Okay. Um, yes, basically here, for the residential sector, the most generic approach is to use population. So is the most relevant activity data for total residential population. Then for space heating, the number of people does not change much. So what is the most relevant data is the surface to heat up, and says for space cooling and lighting. So for space heating, space cooling, and lighting, the most relevant activity data would be floor area. And later, for water heating, consumption depends mostly on the number of dwellings. And same for cooking, which is something like 3 meals per a day per dwelling, and says same for appliances. So appliances, cooking, and water heating would be with number of dwellings. The last exercise, here we can see on the graph in gray that the space heating consumption, as well as two indicators, the intensity per 100 square meter in blue and the intensity per dwelling in orange. They are all rescaled to 100 in 2010 to ease the visualization of the respective trends. So before 2010, we see that the space heating consumption is increasing, and it's increasing faster than the intensity per dwellings, and the intensity per 100 square meters is roughly stable. So how do you understand these trends? Choose the possible ending for the following sentence. Space heating energy consumption increased because. So basically here we are only focused from the beginning of the graph until 2010, and we are trying to look at what was the reason that space heating in consumption increased. Okay, so here we need to look at the indicators and the data that we are looking at. So, for example, population, most of you have chosen population, but we don't have any information about the population. Here, we cannot tell. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not. So, the third option is not correct. The two correct options are the first and the second one. Why? Because the consumption increased faster than the intensity per dwellings, which means that the number of dwellings increase, and that's why the first option is true. And we can see that intensity per 100 square meters is stable, so we can rule out the last option, that is the intensity increase, and at the same time the intensity per dwelling increase. So the size of the dwellings increase, otherwise the intensity per dwelling would have the same trend as the intensity per floor area. So that's why the second option is also true. And then looking to the other part from 2010 onwards, space heating energy consumption slowly decreased because, and we need to choose one of the following options that we have here. Yes. Okay. Yes, here you are right. The correct answer is the intensity decrease. As in the case before, we don't know anything about population, so the population we don't even know if it decrease or increase. The consumption increased faster than the intensity per dwellings, which means that the number of dwellings increase. Um, and we can see that the two intensities decreased and they have the same trend. So that's why the intensity decreased. Coming back to the slides, um, uh, that I wanted to introduce a bit the what can we do with energy efficiency indicators for residential service for the residential sector. But then taking into account services, we have the energy data by end use as for residential, but then we also have energy data by subsector. And also we are now taking also a data divided by coming from data centers. But also the activity data can be a number of employees, services floor area, and value added. Um, Here, for instance, it's true that the weight of each subsector in energy terms might not relate to its output expressed with value added. This is the case that I was mentioning you before for Switzerland in 2022. And here we can see that even though the energy consumption for these two sectors highlighted represents almost a 20% for both of them, then the value added for wholesale and retail represents a 23%, whereas the accommodation only represents a 9%. So this means that accommodations and food services provide little wealth but consume 20% of the services, whereas the wholesale subsector contribute 23% to the economy. The energy efficiency indicators shows that the wholesale and retail have a significantly lower intensity than accommodation and food services. Again, if we come back to the Menti, let's try to just ask a question similarly to the one that we did before for residential. For each end use, what is the most relevant activity data to compute energy intensity? And now, instead of choosing, we can choose between population, value added, and floor area. Yes, here is similar to residential, but then we are taking into account that we have also the subsectors, which usually goes with value added. Well, it always go with value added. So we have the two last subsectors, wholesale and retail, and accommodations and food, which goes with value added. Then total services, which is the most aggregated data that we can have for the consumption for services. So it would go with population. And finally, space heating, space cooling, and lighting, which will go with floor area. And now we are gonna try to introduce a bit the methods of collecting data. For the residential sectors, there are four main ways to gather data. Energy surveys are a widely used source of estimating residential consumption for energy balance or end-use consumption modeling. And periodical or annual end-use energy consumption surveys can be done, for instance, with real estate companies or the households. Then the use of administrative data, such as land registries, can be interesting as administrative sources. We can also collect data directly from utilities or fuel vendors, and this can help measure fuel consumption. And we can also use tools for estimating and modeling, which can be done on equipment through Northern, for instance. So yes, here we have the four different methods, but usually in the building sector, in the residential sector, we rely mostly on on surveys. Surveys are costly but very effective and constitute a key method for the building sector. One of the most time-consuming tasks is carefully designing the survey or determining whether a suitable design already exists and identifying a representative sample. Here are the most important parameters to design in case we need to implement a survey: the sample size, the data collection, the time frame dedicated to plan and collect the data, and also the time frame to process and publish the data, and how to process the results. Many countries conducted this kind of survey recently, so we don't need to start from scratch. But questionnaire design should be taking into account the following points: general household information, for instance, the household size, the age of members, the living status, the dwelling information, the type of dwelling, the year of construction and renovation, and then end-use activity data for all the end uses that I've mentioned before, for space heating, cooling, water heating, cooking, lighting, and also electrical appliance activity data and personal car activity data. After finalizing the survey, design and collect the results, the final step is model implementation. This includes integrating various data sources, the administrative, the macroeconomic, household, and business survey data. These inputs are used to model energy consumption across end uses such as space heating, water heating, and so on. And the output is the total final energy consumption disaggregated by types of fuel, such as coal, fuel, oil, natural gas, etc. Once the data is processing models are in place, an annual model is stabilized to calibrate data between survey years and probably fill the missing data. So yes, coming back again to Menti. Um, we want to ask you some like three questions about your experience and your current data. So do you have a national survey on household energy consumption disaggregated by end use? Okay. Do you have available activity data in your country for the building sector? And select all the activity data that apply.
We cannot. So, it doesn't work, Sonia?
It doesn't work?
Yes.
The choices cannot be pushed.
No? Okay. But are you seeing the question in your computer or in your phone?
Yeah.
The phone.
But even though we are
Okay.
pressing it,
Okay.
doesn't work.
No worries. We'll go to the next one. What are the main challenges you face in collecting energy and activity data related to buildings? Let me know if it works, please. Yes, well, lack of data. Yes, I guess it's very country specific, but one of the main challenges, of course, is the availability, cooperation, and consistency, the limited data availability, I guess also resource constraints, uh, privacy concerns, uh, yeah, the frequency of survey conduct, that's also important, confidentiality. Okay. Finally, I would like to very quickly mention the IES data collection on energy consumption. Um, these were the main ideas, but of course, every country has their own experience. So that's why the IEA gathered online numerous data, collection practices, along with some documentation, survey examples, and reports from many countries around the world. And so here you can check for the different countries and different sectors, how have they experienced their data collection. And I think this is a very valuable tool to gain and to see the experience from different countries. In addition, the IEA resources, we maintain in our webpage documentation with methodology and detailed country notes, and also two manuals on statistics and policy making, and an IEA learning course on energy efficiency data. And finally, to complement and strengthen this framework, the IA recently developed two guides to build national roadmaps. One called Designing an Energy Statistic Roadmap, which basically mentions the key components of energy data systems and provides recommendations to strengthen. And to mention briefly some conclusions, energy demand and end-use data is essential because enables policymakers, researchers, and industry stakeholders to make informed decisions, track progress, and implement effective strategies, improves energy modeling, allowing for more accurate projections of future energy needs, and enables the development of energy efficiency indicators that track progress and measure improvements over time. So the IEA is pleased to collaborate with countries to enhance demand-side data collection and analysis. And yes, with this in mind, thank you very much for your attention and for answering all these questions, Menti. And feel free to comment or question any part of this presentation, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Sonia, for this presentation. We saw a lot of examples from around the globe, and we hope that we can have soon some great examples from Southeast Asia, particularly for the end-use side of data collection. We know as well that there are many projects ongoing, and some household survey like this one in Philippines were conducted. So we hope that we will see more this information which are relevant for Southeast Asia, more information on cooling, ACs, and so on. And just to comment on the Sonia presentation, we saw here a lot of examples about space heating, but of course, the methodology is the same if you are referring to space cooling. I don't see any Q&A questions or no raised hand. So in the meantime, I will have a question to Sonia. We know that the household surveys are crucial for estimating end-use energy consumption, but they may be very resource intensive to conduct. So could you, Sonia, please tell us from your experience, how often countries usually conduct this kind of survey, and if they fill the gaps between the surveys to have a full-time series?
Yes, of course. Well, usually it's very country specific, and sometimes it depends on and varies between the countries. But usually, some of the countries conduct every 2, 3 years, and some of them rely on more like in longer frameworks, such as 5 years, depending on the current data. And to fill out the missing data, they rely on simple averages or estimations, or even growth rates to just estimate the data in between. But yeah, it's very country specific, and usually this type of data doesn't change much from one year to another. So when there is a missing data, that's why they rely on basic estimations such as a sample average. And yes, that's it. Yes. Let me present. Do you hear my presentation? Okay. So here, basically, to accurately compare data across multiple years, we need to remove the influence of weather, since some years may be warmer or colder than others. So to account for this variability, we calculate cooling degree days and heating degree days, which help normalize energy use by reflecting the impact of temperature differences. Because, for example, with warmer weather, we consume more for space cooling in buildings, and with cooler weather, we consume more for space heating in buildings. Here, for instance, the method for CDD, cooling degree days, is the following. First, we need to set a temperature threshold, for instance, 25. This would be the threshold, the temperature threshold. And then for each date, we compute the positive difference to the threshold. Here, the first day, we won't compute anything because it would be negative, but here would be 27 minus 25, so it would be 2, 28 minus 25, so it would be 3, and then we sum up all the numbers, and we get the final CDD day for the period of time, which usually is 1 year. And then when we have this information, we calculate the adjusted energy consumption as the actual energy consumption times the average CDD divided by the CDD of the current year. So for example, here we have from 2017 to 2019. And as we did before, we calculate the different CDDs for each year with the method that I just mentioned. And then we also calculate the average of the 3 years for CDD. So in the numerator, we would have that average, and in the denominator, we would have the CDD for each year, and then the actual energy consumption. So then to compute the adjusted energy consumption, we just like calculate this formula, and we get, for instance, that here in this case, for 2017, we have 21. For 2018, we have 20.4 and then 20.1. So this is an interesting thing to do, because as we can see, the space cooling in gray, which is the space cooling energy consumption without correct the temperature, in 2017 is higher than in 2018, and then it goes up again. But with the temperature corrected, it goes, well, it decreases through the time. So temperature corrections allows to identify more clearly the trends, removing the weather impact on consumption. And so I have two more questions on Minty, but I don't know if we have time, Agnieszka. Yes, okay, so we don't have time, but yes, basically here I just want to finalize saying that it's good to correct the weather, because then, for instance, we can see that the space heating actually with the temperature corrected is higher in 2017, whereas here we could think that in 2019 the space cooling would be higher in the last year. And yes, thank you so much. And I will give you the floor to Agnieszka.
Thank you, Sonia, for this couple additional slides on cooling degree days. We have one more question in the chat. It's from Cambodia. The person asked about clean cooking practices from around the world. So I would just quickly reply that this topic is very dear to the International Energy Agency. For example, last year we hosted the Clean Cooking Summit, where we gather many representatives from around the world. So we are trying to address this issue through this type of fora. And yes, there is a lot of resources and information available on our website about this. But yeah, that's it. From our side, we are here really more to talk about the measures than implementing policies or projects. But if you would like to follow up on this topic, please contact us, and we will provide more details. Thank you. And now it's time for the presentation from APEC. Ms. Elvira Gerlidon will give the presentation about the demand-side data and efficiency indicators in APEC. The floor is yours, Elvira.
Thank you, Ms. Agnieszka. I'm sharing my presentation. Hopefully you can see it now.
Not yet.
Sorry for that. Slow internet connection, maybe. It's already seen in my computer. Still not?
No,
No.
it's not yet. Not yet.
Well,
For both big times are full screen.
may I just unshare and then
Share again.
share again? Okay. Let me repeat that. For that. Still not?
Not yet.
Not yet.
No, it's day going on.
Wow. Sorry for that.
Sharing it. Get sharing. Equals. Share. Interesting. In full screen. This is everything. Sorry. Technical.
It says on screen sharing, but I'm not sure why it's not sharing.
Let me try.
Yeah,
Even me.
yeah.
Send it to Agnes.
No.
If you will quickly send this to us, we can open the presentation from our side.
Can you track the chat?
I'm not sure. Oh, it's not here.
No. That's nice.
I'm sorry for the technical difficulties which we are experiencing right now. Please bear with us.
May changes ako yung natin.
So, hindi na, ano yung sa slot?
Hindi na updated yun sa chat.
Happens to the file.
Okay,
Or
I'll share it with the
Share
chat.
Nikki.
Can you see from the chat, Matthew?
Is it in the chat?
Regular chat.
In the IC chat.
Yes, the chat. Yes, the
I just shared it.
So this is the latest version.
Yeah.
Download. Open the folder.
No, we can proceed with certain documents.
Can we proceed to the next presentation if it's really taking time?
Would you prefer us to go now to the, maybe we could go now to the Philippines, right? And
Yes, please. Sorry.
so now, so we will have Mr. Danilo Vivar, the division chief of the policy formulation and research division, Energy Policy and Planning Bureau of the Department of Energy, which will present on the residential energy consumption survey, which was recently conducted in the Philippines. Mr. Danilo, please wait a second. The presentation is now on. We cannot hear you. If you could unmute yourself. We cannot hear you, Mr. Danilo. Your microphone is muted.
Okay na.
Now we can hear you. The floor is yours.
It's okay? Okay,
Yes.
thank you. A pleasant day to each and every one of you. I am Danilo Vivar from the Energy Policy and Planning Bureau of the Philippine Department of Energy. So before I begin, I would like to express our appreciation to the organizer of this event, the International Energy Agency, for inviting the Philippine DOE to be able to present basically an overview of 2023 HEX, including details on its implementation and some of its preliminary results. Next. So as I have, next please. As I have previously stated, my presentation outline will cover an overview of the 23 3X, followed by the discussion on details of survey, implementations, and design. And finally, I will discuss some preliminary results of the survey. So, next. As a background, we are currently implementing the Comprehensive Regional Energy Study in the Philippines, or the CREST, which is a regional study that aims to assess the end-use energy consumption and various energy issues and concerns in the country. So the project is composed of three components. The first phase is the conduct of household energy consumption survey, started in 2023 for its preparatory phase and expected to be completed on the third quarter of this year. So the second phase is the conduct of survey of energy consumption of establishments. We just started the implementation of this project last April of this year and expected to be completed by second quarter next year. So, and the last phase is the conduct of final reports and relevant studies in collaboration with the selected state universities and colleges in the Philippines. So the CREST requires a regional level of disaggregation for household sectors' energy consumption pattern. So at the end of the project, we expect to improve the country's energy data and statistics through regionalization of energy database and energy balance table. Next. Okay. So let me focus on the So let me focus on the first component of the CREST project, which is the implementation of the household energy consumption survey. For us, we describe this as a special survey that gathers data and information on the household energy consumption patterns, practices, behaviors, and awareness on energy programs as input to policy formulation and recommendation for informed decision making. And since it will involve a gathering of comprehensive data and information from the residential sector, it will also address our data gaps in the demand sector. Next, please. So although HEX is designed to be implemented every 5 years, the latest conduct of HEX is only in its fifth series of implementation from the first conduct of HEX in 1989. So the survey, this is because of a budget constraint. So the survey aims to analyze household energy consumption pattern by identifying energy sources, fuel mix, and the efficiency of appliances. It also determines cooking fuel switching, energy conservation techniques, public awareness on government energy programs, and issues and concerns on energy services of the households. So additionally, it collects data on household vehicle for transportation. Next. The scope and coverage of the survey comprise energy resources and usage to include electricity, petroleum, and renewable energy and their technologies. It also includes household transportation, which is to gather information for the penetration of e-vehicle in the household that we started to account in our EBT in 2022. And cooking fuel switching that can provide data on SDG 7 indicators for the target access to clean cooking fuels. So it also covers practices and attitude of household towards the use of energy by activity, such as application of energy saving measures on the use of appliances, and household awareness on government energy program to include energy efficiency and conservation program, LPG, nuclear, renewable energy, and energy resiliency program of the Philippines. So the 2023 HEX surveyed about 45,000 households designed to generate a reliable estimate of national and regional levels. Next. So as for the sampling domain of the survey, as previously stated, the 2023 HEX surveyed about 45,000 households, designed to generate reliable estimate at regional levels using a two-stage cluster sampling design. Primary sampling units were barangay. Barangay is a small community in the country, at least 2,000 people in terms of population. And this is also the enumeration areas and while the household units serve as secondary sampling units. So the barangays serve as primary sampling units, and the secondary sampling units is the household units. So in terms of replicates, the 6 PSUs form a replicate for most of the province domain. For most provinces, each replicate includes 6 barangays or EAs, and this number is considered statistically sufficient for reliable estimate at the provincial level. So 8 PSUs form a replicate for most of the highly urbanized cities. HUCs typically have the higher population densities and more complex energy profiles. So therefore, a larger sample, 8 PSUs per replicate, is used to ensure reliable and representative estimates. Then 3 PSUs form a replicate for small provinces. So in provinces with smaller population, fewer PSUs are enough to provide statistically valid results without oversampling. Next, please. For our sampling allocation, to generate reliable estimate at different geographic levels, a specific number of sample replicates is required per sampling domain. For national level estimates, at least 1 sample replicate per domain is sufficient. So for regional level estimates, 4 replicates are needed. So that is why for 2023 HEX, 4 replicates were employed. And this allocation allows flexibility and precision in reporting at multiple levels. And for our sample selection, in terms of selection for PSUs, it's systematically selected from the master sample frame using equal probability. Then at the second stage, household units were drawn systematically within each selected PSU or barangay. This two-stage probability is based sampling approach ensures that every household had an equal chance of selection, contributing to the survey's representativeness and reliability. Next, please. So the 2023 HEX is a joint collaboration between the Philippines Department of Energy and Philippine Statistical Authority. So the DOE provided funding and technical support and guidance for the development of questionnaire and enumerators manual, while the PSA is a central statistical authority in the Philippines led the implementation from training to actual data collection, ensuring adherence to statistical standards. Next, please. So the slides show the contents of the 2023 HEX questionnaire. The questionnaire includes the geographic identification of the households, including their heads and characteristics of respondent. Aside from usage, sources, and other information about energy issues and concerns, the questionnaire also covers information on income and housing characteristics. Next, please. So, after the preparation of the draft questionnaire, the 2 pre-tests were conducted through PAPI and CAPI system. For the pre-test 1, the PAPI is a paper and pencil personal interviewing applied for the interview of about 140 households. That is for pre-test 1. And for pre-test 2, we use computer-assisted personal interviewing for about 70 households to validate the questionnaires' effectiveness. So each pre-test consists of 6 interviewing teams. One team comprised of a supervisor and 3 field interviewers. Next, please. So right after the full development of questionnaire and enumerators manual, series of trainings were conducted before the actual survey to understand the objectives, concept, and definition indicated on the survey instrument, and to equip the personnel with the capacity relative to the use of handheld computer, tablet, and each application system for the actual enumeration. So the training of trainers were conducted while the participants of this training were served as resource speaker for task force training, down to the sectoral level trainings for field enumerators. Next. Field enumeration run for 28 calendar days, excluding Sundays. Field supervisors are crucial to ensure that prescribed procedures for field work are properly implemented, and the performance of interviewers meets the standards based on the enumerator's manual. Next, please. So now let me present to you the preliminary results of the 2023 HEX. Next, please. As indicated on the slide, the 2023 HEX total number of households stood at 27.9 million, or almost 7 million more than the 2011 HEX, which is only 21 million. During the enumeration period from December 2023 to May 10, 2024 of 23 HEX, around 45,000 households were interviewed by field personnel using computer-aided personal interviewing, or CAPI, and Android tablets to ensure efficiency and quality on actual data collection. According to Philippine Statistics Authority, the margin of error for the 2023 HEX was 3%. So the NCR, or Metro Manila, Region 3, and Calabarzon regions accounted for the biggest shares to the total number of households, while CAR and Surgeon regions have the least contribution in terms of number of households. Next, please. The 2023 HEX gathered data from responses of households pertaining to their consumption of electricity source from electricity distribution, generator sets, and storage batteries, and utilization of petroleum product for LPG, gasoline, diesel, and kerosene for household activities, and from consumption for regional energy, renewable energy sources, including traditional fuels such as firewood, charcoal, and other biomass residues, and biogas, solar, hydro, and including wind. Next, please. So, results of 2023 HEX. Sorry. Sorry. Okay. 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 The 23 HEX showed a significant insight with regards to the proportion of household population using electricity, petroleum product, and renewable energy. For instance, the proportion of household population using electricity for 2011 HEX recorded at around 87%, up to 90% proportion based on the 2023 HEX. The same with the use of petroleum product, from 72% to 77% from 2011 to 2023 hex. Next, please. So, improved household access to electricity translate to a 7.8% average rate of increase in electricity consumption. That is between the results of 2011 and 2023 hex. In 2011, the average monthly usage was around 108 kilowatt hours. And by 2023, this more than double at 267 kilowatt hours. So the substantial increase indicates that electricity has become more essential in the daily lives of Filipinos. It reflects the growing utilization for electrical appliances, digital connectivity, and modern conveniences for space heating, entertainment, and lighting. Next, please. So while a majority of households in the Philippines are using electricity, uh, uh, a large proportion of them encountered power interruption and complained about high electricity costs. So in 2011, the high cost of electricity was the most pressing issue as cited by 77% of households. And this is followed by power interruption at around 74%. However, by 2023, we see a shift in perception. The power interruptions became the top issue of the household, affecting around 82% of household, while concern about high electricity costs dropped slightly to 71%. Next, please. LPG was the most used petroleum product by households for both 2011 and 2023 survey round, particularly for cooking, and this is used for cooking, majority used for cooking. Then increasing LPG use may stem from availability of supply and services as household favor its convenience and efficiency of use over traditional fuels. So households use gasoline and diesel primarily for transportation, while kerosene was mostly used for lighting. Next, please. Next, please. Okay, I think this is my last slide. By renewable energy source, including traditional fuels such as firewood, charcoal, biomass residues, it is the top sources of RE, registering a decline in the proportion of household population using them. Meanwhile, the solar energy is an emerging renewable energy source used by 27% or about 5 million households in the country. So this is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Danilo. It's a really great presentation and great example of cooperation between the Department of Energy and the Statistical Office. Definitely, we can all profit from the experience of statistical offices while engaging them in conducting surveys like this. We are a bit above the time, so I will now directly go to Miss Elvira. Thank you so much, and hopefully the presentation will now work. Sonia.
Are you hearing?
We can hear you.
Should I share or are you sharing?
You're sharing already.
I'm sharing, but it won't show really. I don't know why.
Now it works. You can see the presentation.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'll just make it quick. Thank you to IEA for inviting us to this very important webinar. So I'm going to make a presentation on the buildings efforts in APEC. To give you a little background, or you already heard about this earlier. Why it's not showing?
We can see the slides, but we see the first slide. Oh, now we see background. But we cannot hear you now. Edvira, we cannot hear you. Yes?
Sorry.
The building sector includes consumption or energy consumption in the construction, heating, cooling, lighting homes. Why is it like that? I don't know. Okay. And it's really important because the global floor area is growing rapidly, especially in developing economies where economic growth is increasing. I don't know what's happening to my presentation. No, I'm trying to put it back. Because it's like that. All right. Are you showing?
No.
Can you just show?
Sorry, can you show?
Can you see my presentation?
This is what there is.
Yes, we can
What
see
you're seeing.
building.
Okay, building is a major using energy demand and emissions is associated with supplying and consuming the energy. This makes an important component of the total emissions. So you have heard already about this earlier from our IEA colleagues. And also, why it's not showing? Can you see this? Can you see this?
This is what there is. Yeah.
So slow. Although these building sectors you already know include services and households, but they have different in terms of activity. Like in services, it has a complex analysis because of its different activities. Like the hospitals is different from the restaurants, so there is an important relationship between the two in terms of end uses like space heating, space cooling, water heating, cooking, and others. But of course, the activity levels are all different in both sectors. Now, let me show you some energy consumption trends in the building sector in APEC. You'll see that although the Southeast Asia's building consumption is accounting for only a small share of the total APEC building consumption, it's like around 5% or something of the total APEC building. But then in terms of growth, it contributed. It's one of the top three regions in APEC that's contributing to the growth of the building consumption, with the US number one and other Americas, which include Chile, Peru, and Mexico. And the third one is Southeast Asia with around 2.3% increase from the last year's building consumption. To continue, you will see in this slide the share of building consumption is the third largest in APEC as well as in Southeast Asia. I think it's not just in APEC, but globally, it's the third largest consumption. And it's relatively the same as APEC, accounting for a third of the total final consumption. But then in terms of share between the two, the residential sector is accounting for the largest share with around more than 50% of the total building consumptions. And it's also the one growing faster than services sector. There is an interesting trend in the last 2 decades in terms of the consumption between the APEC regions and the Southeast Asia. I'm not sure why you are not seeing my other slide, but then you will see from the slide that other Northeast Asia Okay. So in here, this is the consumption of the buildings from the last 2 decades, you will see most of the regions are increasing, except for other Northeast Asia. It's interesting to know what's happening to the consumption in the other Northeast Asia, while others are increasing, but then other Northeast Asia, which include Japan, Korea, and Chinese Taipei and Hong Kong, China, has decreased for the last 2 decades. In terms of in Southeast Asia member economies, you will see the same trend only in one economy, which is Thailand. So it's interesting to know what's happening, what has happened in the last 2 decades that has slowed down the consumption in the building sector. And you know already from the last presentation and in yesterday's presentation, the energy balance table, which include the services sector and the residential. Although in the energy balance table, you cannot see anything on the end users consumption, but you will see all the types of fuel used for this activity. Only the aggregated or the type of fuel, it can be seen in the energy balance sector and energy balance table. That's why we have this energy efficiency indicators template, which as you have heard already, we had a very good coordination collaboration with IEA, and they allowed us to use this energy efficiency indicator template. And you will see from here, the left side of your screen is the services sector template, and the other one is the household sector. You'll see that they have almost similar activity and uses activity, but if you scroll down, I won't show the IEA template this time because of the time constraints. The collected data can only be filled in with aggregated numbers, especially on the services sector. But if the economy has this type of survey, like the Philippines, would probably in the household sector could fill in all the end users activities in the household sector. So in summary, in Southeast Asia, we can collect only 2 economies can submit the complete activity or the end users consumption. These are Hong Kong, China, and Chinese Taipei. And the Philippines, although they have the survey, but they still haven't completed the household consumption survey or the energy efficiency indicator templates with the result of the household consumption survey. It would be appreciated if they can fill in the template. But then again, we have this project that we ask or seek the help from our consultant on analyzing the gap of this consumption or in the household, and we were able to have a methodology to estimate the end users, especially if we have a basis on that. So we try to estimate Brunei Darussalam, Malaysia, the Philippines, and Thailand. We already asked their permission or their thoughts on the methodology, and we probably other economies, we would like to help them in this activity. So what can we see? You already saw some important analysis of the consumption in the building sector, especially if you have a completed data. So in this case, the Hong Kong, China, they are able to fill in the energy efficiency template, and can be seen aside from the all other consumption. Space cooling has the largest share of the building consumption, and by subsector, health and social work consume the largest energy. We can also analyze more than this if this subsector of the services, which of them consume a lot of energy or improving their energy intensity. For the case of Chinese Taipei, we also see that aside from, because I think all other end users is difficult to obtain, so this data fell in this category. But then if you take out these other consumption, you will see that the space cooling is also the largest share of the services energy consumption. Now, as we also know that there's a hex in the Philippines, we are able to estimate some of its consumption based on the some of our methodology. As you have heard earlier, if other activities or such as the cooking per dwelling, space cooling, and all other activities in the household are not reducing, most probably because of the increase in the large increase in cooling will affect the total consumption in the household sector. So this consumption of around 2.3% increasing for the last 10 years, the increase is greatly influenced by the space cooling. But then again, because of the reduction in other activities, this was offset by this reduction. You already know how to conduct the temperature correction. So this is also applied in this analysis. So in conclusion, of course, if we have better data, we could give you better analysis. If we have detailed information, aggregated end users, disaggregated end users, and activity data. Because good granularity of data can show in which end users activity was highly demanded, and hence we can appropriately recommend some policies. It helps in developing policies and energy transition, especially nowadays that we are into race into the energy transition in the future because of the COP21 goal. Member economies need to explore other experiences in data collection, as mentioned already by our colleagues from IEA. We can take from their experiences because other members will probably willing to share their experiences. And APEC is also willing. You've heard IEA would like to help you out in this effort. Of course, APEC, we are one in in our objective to help out other members to collect this end users data or then data collection. Conducting survey was already mentioned that is most probably the best way to obtain end users consumption. And then estimation based on technical studies can also be helpful, but it does not really show the true patterns if we do not have any basis at all. So I think that's all for me. Sorry for the technical problem and my some problem in whatever happening. So happy to take it, which you have